we go to the polls on October 17th. Do you see this kind of shift in allegiances affecting the numbers in any way?
Certainly, one of the things, first of all, I'd like to comment on is the question that you posed in regards to Wiper. It's critical to note that CORD only exists at presidential level. It seems to be an arrangement between Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. And suddenly, the larger party that benefits there is ODM. It doesn't look like Wiper is part of that arrangement, because there was no wide or countrywide negotiations on Wiper. Kalonzo never negotiated for any seat. Certainly Wiper looks like it's the small brother who tags along and gets kicked you know, on the chest. If you're in Wiper and you have partnered with ODM, suddenly that's political suicide, and that's what the likes of Hassan Omar and the likes of Musila have noted. And if you look at Nairobi, they never negotiated for any potent seat. It was only Kalonzo Musyoka who was just interested in himself as Kalonzo Musyoka, not the party. And that's the reason why he's facing a lot of political bleed. But coming back to your question, which is key, the losers, certainly the ones who didn't make it, they've realized that one of the key things that is integral in politics is political survival and relevance. And therefore, you look at the side that looks like it's certainly going to take power, or where you can quickly benefit. And if you look at political survival, the likes of Munya certainly did a forecast, and you look at where am I going to remain relevant, where am I also perhaps likely to be poached, because also in politics is the aspect of poached. You have much more capital if you're poached by a larger party, suddenly, so you have sometimes to be contentious and you have to be received. And that's the reason why you're seeing the likes of Joho. I saw Mombasa complaining, saying, how can Munya be regarded as a principal when the likes of Joho have fought tooth and nail for this party? So these issues of prodigal sons being raised further above the sons who have fought for the party is raising contentions thereabout. But the principals are interested in numbers, especially where they are not seen as those areas being their strongholds. And it's a good political strategy, but certainly it tends also to wound the other generals who have been there for the party all along. So I think it's a careful thing that the party needs to look at, but it's a political strategy that works.
For example, the leaders from Western Kenya who trooped to State House after losing in the various contests. Do you see that swaying the numbers in Western Kenya in favor of Jubilee in any way?
I think one of the things is that the losers become spoils of war. They become, we went to war and we've gone to your stronghold and we've come back. There are trophies to be shown to the opposition. And I've seen the Western...
without any particular dividend going the Jubilee way?
There will be, particularly in Western. I mean, we cannot underwrite that. Jubilee performed extremely well in Bungoma and other parts of that country, and we cannot underwrite the fact that they have now Polo Toma on board and the other likes. They will definitely tweak a little bit, but let's say the example of Isaac Ruto. I don't think he adds anything to Jubilee except the excitement, because he didn't take anything to NASA. Everything remained intact. The people voted for Jubilee, so he is basically just coming to annoy the opposition. Somebody like Munya, Raila Odinga got 10% in Meru, 55,000 votes without the help of Munya. I do not think that necessarily in Kenya, and earlier we talked about the politics of ideology, I do not think necessarily in Kenya that when a leader shifts allegiance, he shifts with people. I do not buy, and especially when they are the leaders like who've lost. I think people move on their own because it is every politician is looking out for themselves, and people do not own up to the vision of the leader. And maybe that's why NASA is coming up with the whole M-Pesa ideology, because that is a new way of doing things. And you saw Boniface Mwangi do it in Starehe. It was an amazing thing where one of the criticisms that was leveled against Raila Odinga was that he's saying he's going to fight corruption. But the people that were seen behind him were criticized as maybe they do not represent a fight against corruption. But here he's going and saying, now own up the vision. The people of Kenya will actually support this campaign, and when I get to power, I am not in chains of any corrupt individual. So I do not think it has any value to Jubilee.
Eric Onjuri, in terms of the shift in allegiances.
Yes, let me first comment on what my brother here said about that whole M-Pesa thing. And I said that when you collect funds from the public, you need to be accountable for those funds. He has done it before. He has not accounted for what he did with that money. He's doing it again, and I doubt whether he's going to account for that cash. When you collect money from the public, do not take the public for a ride. Go back and account for it and say, this is what we received, this is what we've done with the money. Now, in the subject of change of allegiances, you realize that we cannot all be leaders. Not everybody who goes for elective posts will end up getting that position. Some may get it now, others may get it later on in the future. But the truth of the matter is, all people have the potential of mobilizing votes that are sided to one particular individual. And right now, with this whole 50+1 system that we are using, each and every vote counts. If you are to look at the votes that Laboso got, and you look at what Isaac Ruto got, if you can combine the both, it boosts His Excellency the President's votes. So everyone that comes in, who can be able to add value? And let me tell you, somebody like Isaac Ruto, he's a sharpshooter. Simply because he lost does not mean he's lost relevance. Simply because he didn't get governorship this time round does not mean he will never get any other elective position. He knows how to mobilize votes, either within his backyard or even to go to other areas and show people how to mobilize more votes in those places. So his relevance is very much required, and so is the relevance of each and every other party, each and every other person that comes on board. With respect to, for instance, somebody like Peter Munya. Peter Munya may have come in for his own selfish gain, because he's saying, I'm disgruntled, and because I'm disgruntled, I move to this other side. You get it? But in terms of mobilization, he also can mobilize. But in this particular contest, simply because the issues that are being debated upon, or the issues that are driving the voters,
so you do not see the defection affecting Jubilee numbers?
No, I'll tell you for a fact. Right now, even in Meru, people are very disgruntled about this whole Supreme Court ruling. And people will not be looking at what Peter Munya is saying, but they're looking at where justice should have swayed. So even if Munya moves, it's his democratic right, we appreciate. He may move there with a pocket of voters, but I don't think they'll be substantial enough to influence what His Excellency the President will get there.
Okay. Peter?
In my opinion, actually, the move has a significant. It depends actually on the person or the party that somebody is coming. I think Honorable Eugene Wamalwa has actually proven very well in the issue of really bringing those who are in the opposition side. And people can take it like it's light, you know. Everybody's bringing something. About the topic where, Eugene brought a lot of losers in Western to the State House, you cannot underestimate that. Because you keep in mind, we have governors who have lost. Obviously, they have their supporters. You know, you have senators who have lost. They have their supporters. You know, and going for instance, the issue of Isaac Ruto. Isaac Ruto, there are people who are resistant. But now, since he's moving his allegiance, then it means he's actually moving with a big block. Keep in mind, some of them actually have parties, and for somebody who has parties, it's spread all over the country. So you cannot underestimate. I think I agree with him about Munya, because Munya actually seems to be sitting in the middle of Jubilee. You know, it's actually the heart of Jubilee. So he's moving, and actually the timing will not really add that much. But again, every vote matters. So even if it brings 10,000, that 10,000 actually could actually be a factor in making you the president. So it really matters.
Wow. We're in for very interesting times because Isaac Ruto appears to have shifted allegiances and now supports President Uhuru Kenyatta. He was one of the 5 principals of NASA. Now we can see him at Kapkatet joining the Jubilee campaign team. They're ready to welcome the President Uhuru Kenyatta to Kapkatet. Of course, quite a number of people have also shifted allegiances. Quite a number of Western Kenya leaders who lost at the August 8th elections have already declared their allegiance and pledged their loyalty to President Uhuru Kenyatta. We've seen what David Musila and a group of Ukambani leaders who also lost at the August 8th elections have done. Meru Governor Former Meru Governor Peter Munya, meanwhile, has moved from PNU, has actually said that he's moved with PNU into NASA. Of course, there's a group within PNU that still disagrees with that. Gentlemen, I will give you 30 seconds for final comments before we get the trending news by Brian Okoth.
Certainly, it would be a dangerous context to assume, the movement of people like Honorable Munya, because in politics you have to buy inroads and you have to get inroads into certain regions. And by the way, what happens is that voters are normally mobilized by politicians. So any leader who gets an inroad through any other, one of the leaders as in stature of somebody like Munya, you can't assume it politically. Is that you certainly have to close such loopholes. You have to reach out to these leaders, because what happens is that they might tend to soften your strongholds to the opposition. And it's a dangerous trend for you just to assume. Politically, you must not lose your stronghold to anybody. And any person who seems like they're soft to the opposition, you must look at ways of ensuring that you strongly galvanize within your region. For example, if you look at Jubilee, obviously went on an offense strategy. That's the reason why they were able to make inroads in Kisii. They were able to make inroads in Western. They weren't there. How did they make this possible? Through defections and through buying of networks. So you cannot assume any movement at all. And one of the things I have realized, even being in politics, is that the voter base is normally loyal to certain leaders.
Not all of them.
Well, it's true. Let me tell you what. There are people who would follow Kidero religiously, even when he's not the governor of Nairobi, and there are certain bloc that will follow Sonko. Certainly, then how do you get the Kidero bloc? Is by getting Kidero on board. So and there's a strategy in politics we call getting out the vote strategy, which is the aspect of mobilization. And right now, given the fact that we do not have a very wide window in terms of that, buying of networks and ensuring that you get as many defections as possible is a quick win strategy in making sure that you can mobilize as many voters as possible.
Jim, India?
I think probably I would talk to what I would call the politics of tokenism. And this is where we've had times on end, say from the president or even maybe from Raila Odinga, when they go to certain parts of the country and they say, you can't be in opposition forever, vote for us if you want development. And I think it is such a wrong narrative, because it is a narrative that is being used by many of the losers and saying that our community cannot be in opposition forever, our community cannot be on this side forever because we're losing out on development. I think one of the things that we must appreciate is that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 brought on board devolution, which ensures that every county, irrespective of whether you voted for X or Y, you are entitled to a piece of the so-called national cake. And so it is neither here nor there to tell our people that vote for a certain candidate, because when you do so, you will be part of government and you'll be entitled to certain.
And because of time, I'll ask you gentlemen to make it a bit brief.
Mine will be very brief, and I really want to comment on what I saw NCIC doing, but not just to criticize, but actually give a way forward. NCIC is not an education institution. Don't call press conferences, waste time discussing theoretical approaches or even dissertations about peace in Kenya. I'd really appreciate if they can reach out to political parties. Let us see them going out to political parties to have discussions with political parties, saying that we need to promote peace and national cohesion at this time. How best can we work together? I'd want to see them reach out to all these key players, the presidential candidates. Call them and tell them this is what we need. This is the atmosphere in the country. How best can we ensure that there is peace and unity and national cohesion after the elections? Because no leader wants to take a fragmented country in terms of leadership. Everybody would desire to have a united country when they're ascending to leadership. So NCIC, please up your game. Reach out to these people. Don't waste our time telling us about theoretical approaches. Go out and let us see you actually engaging these key players.
Finally, Peter Chimwigut.
Our life is all about economy, it's all about jobs, it's all about right environment for businesses to prosper. And it's all tied in election. I believe we're in crossroads right now in Kenya, where we really need to balance to make sure that what we do actually does not affect our economy, does not affect jobs, it does not affect the environment which, a growth can occur. I'm sending this message to IBC, I'm sending this message to the President, I'm sending this message to Raila. Please, while we are doing all we are doing, let's put in mind the economy of Kenya, which is on crossroads. Let's do it like the way the judgment of the High Court put it, Supreme Court, sorry, where we say 60 days, we get over this and we move on, because people are in school, people are in universities, people are doing business. We cannot be talking about politics throughout. We really need to move this economy forward, and I believe we need to get a president as soon as we can so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter Chimwigut, Eric Wanjohi, Jim India, and Dennis Ndumbi, giving us your very well considered opinions on this matter surrounding the elections and the campaigns heading to the repeat presidential elections. Time now for a quick break. When we return, Brian Okoth will be in studio with the latest trending news from social media.